Mahesh, all your plays, I would say, relate to social issues. Rather serious, searing, difficult issues for us. What is it that moves you to focus on any particular one? Is it your own personal experience? Or is it something that just hits you that you read about or you hear about? What happens?
I don't mean to be difficult, and actually, I'm sorry if it comes across as difficult. But yes, if it's searing and if it is a little close to the bone, I think that's a good thing because I think one of the purposes of theatre is to sort of get close enough for it to maybe hurt a little bit, but it's the proximity to one's own life and identity and existence and one's own milieu that theatre can reflect and mirror very easily. And I think all writers draw from personal experience. Now the thing is that it may not be private experiences, but definitely personal in the sense that it's something that you can draw upon from either your own life or your environment. But ultimately you do sort of personalize it because writing is subjective.
Mahesh, please don't apologize about them being difficult. Because when I go to a play, I want to be destroyed. I want to be shaken up. Or exhilarated, one or the other.
Right.
If it's so bland,
Yeah.
then and it does nothing for you, for me, it's a complete waste of time. So, the issues, say, for example, with the twins, Tara and Chandan. There you dealt with it in the most extreme way. And where did that come from?
Now, you see, the initial inspiration for the story, the plot, was actually something as simple as a medical journal I read about conjoined twins who were separated through this very elaborate surgical procedure. But what interested me was a metaphor that, here were these two bodies with one soul, and with physical separation, there probably may be an emotional separation. So that was really the point of departure. But as I was writing it, I discovered that I was writing more about genders and the gendered self. And this was a process of discovery. It wasn't a conscious decision to take it in that direction. But ultimately what came about was the male and the female self and how they're severed by a kind of social procedure. So it's dealing with the social constructs of gender which my previous play, Dance Like a Man, dealt with. So in that sense, the theme, the writing actually discovered the theme as it went along with Tara.
In some sense, it reminded me, it brought a thread of Sophie's Choice. And
Yes.
In that sense, she made a traumatizing choice. Sophie did.
Right.
But in this, it was very different. In the sense, the choice was almost preordained.
That's
because of the society's completely embedded views and perceptions, which is far more dangerous, don't you think?
I think so. Well, I think choices are difficult to make in any case. And I think to conform with society is also a choice that we make. Yes, one of the excuses all of us tend to give is that these are the pressures that we buckled under. And in that sense, we play ourselves out in the role of a victim. But at the same time, we also exercise our choices, which may not be acceptable to a more liberal-minded society. So in that sense, these are choices that we make. And I think the choices we collectively make is what we call a social voice.
And then looking at the other plays, the other issues that you brought up. One was the eunuch, the hijra. What brought you to that?
That was a chance encounter and a very beautiful encounter with this person in Delhi, in Connaught Place. I was sitting in the park, and this very beautiful woman walked up to me and introduced herself and identified herself as a hijra. Now, unlike most other hijras that are very visible in terms of their gender, this particular person wasn't. And I was struck even in the conversation as to how comfortable she was with her identity as a hijra, as a third gender. It wasn't something she felt squeamish about. It wasn't something that needed to be hidden. She wasn't trying to pass off as a woman. She was who she was, and she seemed perfectly at ease with that. And that got me thinking that it would be very easy to fall in love with such a self-assured person. And what would be the obstacles of falling in love with a person? And again, it comes down to society and the choices we make as social beings as well. And that's how the whole story of 7 Steps Around the Fire came about. And this was also at a time when the BBC had commissioned me to write a play for them, BBC Radio 4. And I had told them that I would write a detective serial. And they liked the idea of my detective, which was this very sort of, benign-looking South Indian professor, and her husband was a superintendent of police. And I thought it would be great to marry the two and give this detective a case amongst the hijras to solve. And that's how the play came about.
And communalism, that also, how was that because of Gujarat? Was it 2002? Is that what triggered it?
No, I actually wrote the play in the 90s. In the late 80s. I wrote Final Solutions I completed it in 1990. This was much before the Babri Masjid destruction. This was actually inspired by the Tazia riots of the 80s in Ahmedabad. So it was in response to that. And of course, the play was commissioned by Alec Padamsee. And I must say, the seed of the idea came from Alec and his group of students who did this improvisation, where these 2 Muslim boys are running away from a mob and they seek shelter in a Hindu household. And later on, of course, in some bizarre, tragic way, what I wrote got mirrored with, the Babri Masjid destruction and the Bombay riots that followed in the early 90s. So in that sense, people think that I wrote this as a response to the Bombay riots, but it was much, much before that. And it's sad that again, in the 2000s we had Godhra and the carnage there, and the kind of victimization that took place in places like Naroda, Patia, and they all seem to get reflected in a play I wrote, a good 15 years.
So the tragedy is that it's still relevant.
Absolutely, yeah. I think that's the tragedy.
That's the awfulness of it.
Yeah.